This is an AMA with Illuvium and Immutable X. The topic is why Illuvium is the first true AAA Web3 game and how Immutable is part of that vision. Today we have Kieran, the co-founder of Illuvium and hosted by our one and only Robbie from Immutable X. Now, passing the mic on to Robbie.
Hello, everyone. We've been really excited to put this together. You're probably already familiar with Illuvium, who is breaking boundaries in the Web3 gaming space. They've got a $3 billion token where all value built in the game goes back to token holders. They've got multiple games built at a AAA quality level, and they're doing it all on Immutable. So really stoked, Kieran, to get the time to talk to you today.
Thanks for having me on, Robbie. It's been long enough now. I think it's been over a year since we've gotten on a video.
And for everyone's context, we're actually only about 10 kilometers apart. It is 2022, so it's on Zoom.
That is pretty crazy, actually. I don't speak to many Australians.
Awesome. So I was thinking, let's just kick it off with a big introduction to the few people who may not already know you and what you're up to, which is, can you talk to me about Illuvium and what your origin story is?
I started back in crypto in 2016. My first exposure was actually with Kane, my oldest brother. He runs Synthetics Protocol, and back then we decided to start a over-the-counter Bitcoin exchange. It was the first in the world actually at the time, and that gave me exposure to Bitcoin, eventually Ethereum, and with Kane starting Synthetics, it was sort of always in my ear saying, look, you need to get into it yourself and properly, not just investing, but look at starting a project. One of the things that I've loved to do all my life is gaming. And I stumbled upon a game in early 2020, Axie Infinity, and I wasn't massively optimistic about the gameplay itself. It was fairly basic, but the underlying technology was what really grabbed me. And I started looking into NFTs and the different use cases that could be applied. And I thought, gaming was just this massive opportunity. And there was no one who was really looking to build what we call a AAA title with, a whole bunch of substance, massive budget, a huge team. And so we decided to start putting it all together after that.
That probably leads into my next question, which is, you encountered Web3 gaming first back in 2020. How do you think it's going right now? What's your assessment on the general industry and where it's going?
I think it's rapidly improving. That's what I'm seeing. I invest in a lot of projects myself, and I tend to try and keep my ear to the ground on what is happening in terms of the transition of Web 2 players coming into the Web 3 space, and that is definitely happening. We're seeing many divisions that are popping up inside these larger AAA studios for Web3, which I think is amazing. But what we're also seeing is a lot of individuals or groups, smaller groups of friends that have been building games for years and years and years in these studios that are hopping over and saying, it's pretty green over here. Like there's open fields. We can build what we want. It's very easy to get access to capital at the moment, and so we're seeing a lot of these new studios form that I think will turn into brand new AAA studios just purely because of the talent that is coming across.
Any you want to name, or?
The two that I'm really bullish on is Nor and Civitas. So I don't know if they're necessarily going to call their studios Nor. That's the title of their games. But yeah, those two teams are the ones that are really impressing me. Like they've got a pretty stacked team already.
Awesome. And I think you touched on earlier, one of the things that you wanted to do entering the space was build one of the first AAA pieces of content to build a credible team. Can you talk to me about hiring in Web3 gaming and how Illuvium has approached that?
Yeah, it's been pretty brutal to be honest. I think you used the term blitz scaling is kind of what we've been doing, and it was very, very hard early on. Back in 2020, we're talking, NFTs hadn't hit the mainstream yet. No one was really talking about it. And the first 20 hires, we had to really utilize our tokens, right? So similarly to how a traditional business will use equity to lure in really good staff, that's what we did with tokens. And yeah, it was a very, very tough, start to get that foundation of 15, 20 core contributors that were experts in their field. But once we had that base, we were then able to tap into their networks as well and say, now that you've seen, we are building something that has a lot of substance, and it is going to be a game that you're going to enjoy playing. You can see that now. What do you think about going out to your friends in the industry, other engineers, other artists? Do you think that they would be, happy to come over or at least have the conversation? And it turns out they were. It hasn't been easy, but it is slowly getting more and more streamlined. We've now gotten to the point where we have literally an internal recruiting team. And so, yeah, we're going, guns blazing, hiring sort of 15, 20 people a month. And it's been quite the journey.
And how many people is Illuvium today, and how are those people made up? Is it all engineers? Is it engineering and marketing? Is it Web3 economics?
You've sort of got about 40% engineers, 40% artists, and then 20% is operations, marketing, customer service, that kind of stuff. But in total, we've got just, I think it's about 230 around that mark. Yeah.
And do you think there are jobs that you guys are hiring that are brand new, like the equivalents don't exist in kind of Web2 gaming worlds?
There's overlap. So, our in-game economist, he's building an in-game economy, but it also touches a real world economy. And so these have been built before, and, there are examples, but there are certainly nuances in Web3 that and challenges that a lot of these experts and team members have faced before, but there's always a little bit of a different spin that we try and put on it in the Web3 space.
And one of the really unique things about Illuvium is your approach to governance and tokenomics and the way that value streams in the game. Probably not a lot of people know this, but pretty much all of the value that you guys create streams back to ILV. And I know those principles around fairness and governance are very important to the Illuvium team. So I wanted to give you a chance to kind of talk about, how do your tokenomics work first off? And then secondly, why is that the best way to build a game? Why are you so passionate about that?
Firstly, we hope it's the best way to build a game. We haven't switched on our economy yet, so we're not 100% sure, but we have a pretty good idea that the network effects of giving the power and giving the value accrual back to the people who are playing the game is going to have benefits that we've never seen before in the likes of gaming. It's this model has been applied to financial products and many other industries before, and it works, right? Like there's power in things like community funding and stuff like that, and we really tap into that. And it's the entire ethos. It's the whole NFT ethos of you get verifiable ownership of your assets. And with that, we thought, okay, if people are able to own the characters, the alluvials that we have in the game, why can't they own the entire finance experience and gain a benefit from being part of this system? And so we came up with this crazy idea to distribute 100% of the revenues back to the people that are staked in the protocol. And so literally, again, this is going into practice in a week's time from now, where we're going to have our land sale, and the first revenue distributions from that will go back to the people that are staked. But yeah, so I don't know what's going to happen. I think it's going to be a really positive thing once that penny drops and like quite literally drops into their staking page, and they can go and claim their revenue distributions. I think people will start seeing the benefits of why we decided to do that.
Illuvium is much more than just one game. And in fact, I know you guys have a really big ambition beyond that. So could you tell me about what do you ultimately want to see this token, this community, this product being, Kieran?
Aaron's grand vision, and Aaron's my other brother, who is the game designer. He's the one that has come up with all of the different interoperable assets and the fuel system and whatever. But we basically want to create, like people will sell you the narrative of a metaverse, and everyone's going to be able to have interoperable assets between different games and whatever. We think that's a long way away. What we can control now is interoperable assets within our own universe. And so that's what we're trying to build around. And so right now you've got Illuvium 0, which is our city builder companion game to Illuvium, the main game. And the way that those two are interconnected is the players in Illuvium 0 in this city builder game are building a whole bunch of structures to extract fuel from the land. And that fuel is what people need to play the games in Illuvium. So, for example, if you want to go out and capture an alluvial, you are required to have a shard. To actually utilize that shard, you need to cure it. To cure a shard, it takes fuel. And so the only way that you can get that fuel is from someone who is mining it, extracting it from Illuvium 0. And so it gives agency to the landowners to say, okay, we can actually have an effect on the real world economy in Illuvium. So if, for example, someone wanted to, a whole bunch of the landowners who control Solons, for example, if they wanted to withhold selling Solons into this pool that is used by the Illuvium players, then you're going to see an increase in the price of travel in the main game. And so that might have this effect where you're like, okay, well, now I'm not going to go out traveling into the overworld. I might play the auto battler because it's a premium to travel right now. But then on the other side of that, you're going to get the landowners who are like, well, I'm going to sell my Solons now because I'm getting a high premium and heaps of people want them. And so you get this real world economy that is interconnected through right now Illuvium 0 and Illuvium. But in the future, we're talking about building this universe into having multiple games, multiple expansions, and all of it will be powered by this same fuel system across literally every single game. So that's kind of what we're moving towards, and obviously there's a lot that we have to build, and it's going to be a very, very long journey. But that sort of gives you an idea of what we're doing differently compared to most people in the space.
The closest analogy I can think of is the gaming studio that's incredibly famous for taking its IP and building this universe of content and games on top of it is Blizzard. With World of Warcraft, with Hearthstone, with all the titles that have come out of there. Is it fair to say you guys are trying to build, the Blizzard of Web3?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Kieran, I wanted to ask you about the community quickly, which is Illuvium has a very strong community. You've got a huge following on Twitter. You've got a massive Discord. Where does that come from? And what would your advice be to other games trying to build their own communities in Web3?
Comes from transparency. We made a decision early on, and it was sort of Grant's decision, who's my other brother, who's the art director. He looked at the space and he said, okay, I know for a fact, like the thing that he controls is the art, right? He doesn't get involved in the dev. He doesn't get involved in tokenomics, anything Web3. All he cares about is the art. And the guy is a freak of nature and CGI. And he's been doing it for 20 plus years. He's dedicated his life to it. And he looked at this space and he thought, that they're 10, 15 years behind in graphics. We are literally going to come out and look insane compared to all these other Web3. Like that's just going to be the reality. And so with that, he gained a massive amount of confidence to be able to say, well, let's just share everything. And I literally mean everything he ends up sharing. And it creates this sense of belonging for the community. You feel like you're on the journey with us, and that ties into how we govern the game as well, right? Like we gave not just the financial benefits back to the players and the people who are staked. We literally, before we had even had a token, we gave governance of the protocol over to the community. So you have this situation where you can get involved in like voting of different configurables for like our fee structure in the marketplace, the different characters that we're building. Do we want to go down the route of a MOBA or maybe an MMO next? All of these decisions we've literally handed back to the community and said, you tell us, what do you want to build? We've set out with a pretty tight white paper that outlines what our vision is. But then we said, what if we're not right? What if we're only right some of the time? We want to have this open forum and this transparency where literally community members have turned into core contributors, community members have turned into admins in terms of like moderators in the Discord. And it's just been amazing to watch this sort of like an organism just grow over time, and everything feels intertwined.
The credibility and the willingness to say, hey, we're not perfect, but we're building this along the way is actually what creates a lot of the strength of the community that you built today. And it also means that, if things go wrong in the future, it's not all built on this perfect vision. It's built on this, hey, we're moving along this kind of vision along the way, and we will get things wrong, but know that we're always constantly sort of improving and trying to build something together. I think that's very important from a sort of expectation setting point of view as well.
So I've actually got something that's probably going to be considered a little bit of alpha, but we're about to make the call on basically how we roll out Illuvium over the next 6 to 12 months. And we have the ability to go out to the community now and say, this is our plan to get out for a modular rollout across the next 6 months. Or the second option is we can give you a minimal, let's call it an MVP, which includes yield. It's open, so we're not closing it off to only a certain amount of people. Everyone can play. But then at that point, do we stop there and say, okay, instead of delivering bit by bit by bit and kind of appeasing the community over time, there is another option where we can say, let's just stop completely in terms of releases and go with one major release later on in the year. And we want to, we've been thinking about it, and it got to the point where we went, why don't we just ask the community what to do? You know what? Let's literally put it back into the hands and say, we don't mind. We actually don't know what the right answer is. And that's the crazy thing here. Like, we're sitting there going, if we do it modularly, is that the best outcome? Or is it best to go, let's not give people a little taste here and there. Let's just go, okay, it's going to take a little bit longer, but here's the entire thing all at once. You get the full experience, and we don't mind either way as well. So it's really that was kind of this profound moment where we're all sitting there around the boardroom going like, why do we keep on debating what is right, what is wrong? Let's just hand it back to the people.
And I think the interesting thing is that giving them the choice can often make them feel way more empowered and way more engaged, which is the beautiful kind of game-like aspect of this stuff as well.
It takes away the when, and we're not asking when. You guys told us when. That's the that's the difference.
Yeah. Next, let's jump a bit to sort of the DAO side and the fundraising side of Illuvium, which has obviously been like very successful over the past couple of years. But you famously turned down sort of a fundraise from large VCs a little while ago because it wouldn't have allowed your community members to get in at that same token price for that raise. So I guess A, do you want to talk about that? Is that true? And B, how are you now approaching this problem? Sort of accomplishing Illuvium's fundraising goals while also making sure it's equitable.
God, it definitely is true, and it's something that I think about every single day. And you know what, I'm still happy that we did it, but at the same time, you know, we're talking about potentially raising when our token price was, you know, 1,500, 1,600, around that mark. So it's a little bit frustrating, but at the same time, I really, it again goes back to this community first aspect. And while right now, looking at the situation, you know, what would have been a better outcome, it probably looks like, yeah, you should have done your capital raise. Maybe you could have raised, you know, $250 million at that stage. That was when Axie had just done their massive raise. And if I'm short-sighted, I look at that and I think that would have been the best option. But if I look long-term, if I zoom out, which is what I always try and do when I'm talking the vision of Illuvium, allowing VCs to, firstly, if they had got in at that point, they would have been wrecked over the past, you know, and then we would have had disgruntled VCs for the past, you know, 6 months and whatever. But the biggest thing would have been that the community didn't get access to that sale, and it didn't make sense to me. I couldn't wrap my head around allowing a VC and not allowing someone in my Discord to invest, especially when the guy in the Discord has been there since day zero. He's sitting there and he's like, yeah, I don't have $1 million, but I've got, you know, $10,000. Like, is that enough to get in this? And I'm thinking, you know what? Yes, it is. Why not? Right? Like, there's no difference between your conviction and the VCs. In fact, you probably have more, you know, because you've been in here. And so glad that we didn't do it. And we built this system which is basically going to allow us to sell to the public whenever we want, right? So Illuvium as a protocol will be able to drop these tokens inside of this platform, and retail investors, institutional investors will be able to come to the platform, purchase them from there with a locking period. we're going to have variable options. So there'll be like a 1, 2, 3, and potentially even a 5-year for the really crazy people that believe in our long-term vision. And for that, you get a discount. And that's what VCs get, right? And that's what I feel like is just not fair to the public. And I want to change that, right? I want to say, screw that, right? Let's give it to, let's make it accessible to everyone. And I seriously don't know what's going to happen in terms of like volume there. Like people ask me, what do you think the split is going to be? Do you think it's going to be like 50-50 or like 20-80? And typically in like crowdfunding models, if you get a product that is really well thought out and has good backing and really good substance, they're the most viral capital raises that you ever see, right? They're huge because you've got tens of thousands of people. Yeah, they're not putting in $1 million, but they're putting in 10K, and that accumulates very, very quickly. So I don't know, maybe it ends up that Web3 protocols can raise more money doing it this way than traditionally with VCs. And then you're bringing on, tens of thousands of people into the journey rather than 5 VC firms,
It's fascinating. I think this is going to be really important primitive infrastructure actually for sort of fundraising in the space. And it makes you think, will there even be sort of a terminal value on a 20-year lockup or a permanent lockup? You never sold the tokens. You're just betting on the residuals this thing is going to bring in. That's really cool. So I'm really curious to see how it goes, because I think it's going to be. I think you'll get. My suspicion is we'll get a lot of like people who are philosophically really aligned, who are like, I want to put this in for a long time. So you'll actually have like a reasonable price on on the longest option, because people just kind of want a virtue signal and say, hey, look, this is how much I believe in the project.
Yeah. And it's important to remember that you're getting your revenue distributions on that anyway. So yes, you've got it locked up in there, but you're getting your portion of the in-game fees, the land fees, the Louvetar fees, all of the entire network streams back to you anyway.
Awesome. So next, let's probably touch on the land sale and kind of upcoming releases you guys have got going. So first thing I wanted to ask is, you guys have been busy. What have been the big milestones that has led up to, I guess, today and the land sale?
Getting that private beta out was the biggest thing, right? Like anything before that is all sort of hype and marketing, and we had trailers, and yes, inside the trailer there was some gameplay, and people were like, that's not real gameplay, and now they're seeing, yes, that actually is real gameplay. They're playing it with that private beta, and so that is pretty much, I mean, that's the milestone that's the only milestone that we've hit, and in my eyes, right, like a significant release of something. In terms of what's coming up, we've got, depending on what the community decides when we write up this IIP of do we deliver modularly or do we deliver one massive suite of products that closer to the end of the year, will depend. And I think if we talk about modularly, what we have coming up, obviously 2nd of June, the land sale, that's really, really important. A lot of people think we're selling land and there's, we're just typical like every other Web3 product. There's no actual game to play on that land. That's not the case. We're already playing the Illuvium alpha internally. It's going to be released 3 or 4 weeks after the land sale. So that June period for Illuvium 0 is going to be really, really big. Just want to be clear though, it won't be attached to the blockchain yet. That will be once the main game starts, but you will literally be able to play the city builder game in 4 weeks time. And that's why we're selling land, not because we need capital or anything like that. Like the actual reason is you need to functionally own the land to be able to play the game. So So that's super exciting. Post that, we've got Illuviums, which are a little bit of a quirky, sort of cool PFP project that was meant to be small, that's turning into, again, like everything, a giant thing.
Yeah.
They will be released around July, and so you'll be able to start minting them and using them in the beta as your profile, and so everyone knows when you top the leaderboards that it's your character. And then post that, we've got all of the other releases that are coming throughout the year.
So land sale, June 2nd. What are you most excited about? Can you talk about how you're actually running technically the land sale?
We're using a Dutch auction, and a lot of people criticize us for doing this. They think it's like the old-fashioned way, and why would you start it off with inflated prices and stuff like that? And everything always comes back in Illuvium to what is the fairest way to do things. And we've looked at many different models for selling NFTs, whitelisting, and all this kind of stuff. And we always come back to the Dutch auction format. It's the only true way to figure out the price of these things. We can speculate all we want, but the reality is when Yuga Labs is going out there and selling $300 million worth of land, and there's not even a game behind it yet, everyone's speculating, and now we've got a market downturn, and so it's like, are we overpriced if we had just like a fixed price starting auction, and the answer is just no one knows. And right, so why not build a mechanism that allows you to figure that out, right? Like the way that a Dutch auction works is it starts at a really high price, it rapidly decreases every 2 minutes, it drops by 2.5%. So within 30 minutes, you're already at the halfway point, the 50% mark of the starting price. So the idea is to not FOMO in. We literally say on our official documents, do not buy at the highest price. Like, just do not do that. We actually are building in another mechanism which allows us to. It hasn't gone through the council yet, but we're going to put it through as an IIP to potentially be approved, to allow us, if for whatever reason the starting prices aren't inflated enough and people still FOMO in at these prices, we have a fail-safe where we can go in, stop the sale, increase the prices, and say, guys, like, we don't want a gas war here, right? Like, and I don't think that's going to happen. Like, these prices are pretty insanely inflated. But again, I don't know, like it's crypto. We've had like nearly 200,000 people register just purely for the land sale, and there's only 20,000 plots. So
yeah,
I don't know, but we've designed it so it's minimizing as much gas as possible. Obviously, we're minting it on Immutable. That's the largest gas saving that we can offer people on top of, obviously, the format of the auction. The fact that we're minting it on layer 2 saves 50-60% of the gas right there.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's been interesting even to see how the Dutch auction format has kind of evolved since the very early days, where the original reason was because it was so expensive to put in individual bids that you could have a smart contract kind of automatically price a range. But yeah, really excited for that, Kieran. Why Dutch auction versus English auction though?
FOMO, right? Like I think it's going to get to a point where you get psychologically attached. An English auction is designed to get people in a room, all looking at the same plot, all looking at the same time, going, okay, well, he just put in a bid, she just put in a bid for this, now it's higher, and it's like, well, I'm already psychologically attached to purchasing this piece of land, rather than, hey, this is my strike price. You know, I've waited. I'm comfortable at $60. You can even program a bot to do it for you, to go, you know what, I'm taking all emotion, all of the impulses out of it. And I'm saying, I know based on my analysis that I'm comfortable paying for a tier 1 land plot at 1.5 ETH, right? And if it doesn't hit that price, well, then you think it's overvalued, right? Like that's just it. If you do it in an English auction, you start being like, okay, well, my limit was 1.5, but they've gone 1.55. Maybe I'll put in 1.56, and then you just start, and all at the same time, people are bidding, which is on chain, which is causing gas wars, and it's just not optimal.
You alluded to this a bit earlier, but what would you say the main differences between other land sales and this Illuvium land sale is?
We have a product that you can actually use the land for, right? Like there's many projects out there that will sell NFTs, and this is not just land, right? Like this stems into our actual main game. One thing that I said from the very beginning, and it was because I had exposure to this space, and I hated whitelists, I hated special preference, I hated the fact that protocols would say like, let's just get all the whales in first, and it's like, yeah, you just created this massive sink of revenue that's in here, but the balance of the game is gone, right? Like it's just not existent, and so that's why you can't purchase an alluvial before the game starts, right? Like it all stems back into it being fair, and we think that selling land on the basis of we might build something in the future is quite frankly fucked, right? Like it's just I don't know how people can do that, right? Like so for us, the biggest difference is we actually have a product.
One that many people are eager to try right now. So looking forward to getting in the hands of the people very soon. And the 5 different land tiers, can you talk to me about those?
As you go up in tiers, they hold different elements and fuel sites. So basically the higher the tier, the more fuel you're going to be able to produce. The more fuel you produce, the more money you're going to make out of selling that fuel to the Illuvium main game players. What that translates to overall in terms of across the tiers is we want landowners to make approximately 5% of all of the in-game transactions for Illuvium. So it basically means, you know, whichever tier you can afford is going to give you access to that revenue. Again, you know, tier 2, 3s, and 4s, they go up rapidly with the amount of production, but it's priced accordingly as well. So yeah, the tier 4s are pretty expensive, but again, you're going to be able to create essentially your own business out of it, right? You buy this plot of land, you start building up these structures, and in perpetuity, you have this ability, as long as people on the other side are wanting to do things in Illuvium. So like using your World of Warcraft Blizzard example, people are still playing that, right? Like people are still playing Counter-Strike and all these old games. Imagine if you owned a piece of Blizzard, right? Of World of Warcraft, or even go back as far as Warcraft, right? Like let's say you owned a piece of Warcraft that meant that you got a piece of revenue in perpetuity for the rest of the time that IP was used. You'd be jumping at that opportunity, right? Like that's sort of what we're creating here.
And the unique thing here, I think, is even Warcraft, you know, no one plays Warcraft 3 anymore. Some people play World of Warcraft. It's been one of the longest standing IPs. But what we're building here is something that, you know, even if this content eventually has a half-life, the other content you guys are building is all using the same stuff. It's like, well, hey, I bought my character in Warcraft 3, but then Dota was built off that and I owned a piece of that too, which I think is really cool.
Yeah, 100%. And same thing with the ILB token. That value accrual. It doesn't matter when we go out and build the MOBA version of Illuvium, or when we. This is another thing that came up the other day from our CTO. What about giving people the ability to use our IP and build on top of our IP, right? That will also be using, one of the prerequisites of that will be that you need to use the ILB token and our fuel system to power those games. We'll give you the ability to build, and we'll share that IP with you, and we'll assist you in our ecosystem to come in. But they might be building a Mario Kart style game where you're running around with, you're driving around with Ramfire and Squiz and all these characters that you literally captured in Illuvium thinking that you were going to use them for an auto battler. And now all of a sudden you're in this Mario Kart style game over here, and it hasn't cost you anything, and it doesn't affect our in-game balance because we've literally factored in that these assets are going to be interoperable across the entire ecosystem.
Yeah, super cool. Building the next mega IP and the kind of incentive mechanisms for that to grow. It is an incredibly exciting vision, Kieran, and I think you guys are well positioned to pull it off. You recently closed your council election. What are your thoughts around future governance? That's really at the core of what you guys are building. It's what will enable your community to have trust as you go down all these different business pathways.
I was just thinking, I actually should have nominated you. Now that we've got so many people in our community now. We obviously just did permissionless and whatever. And so many people now are like, oh, how cool is Robbie on stage? Like, he really loves Illuvium and all that kind of stuff. And I was literally just thinking, shit, I definitely should have nominated you. I don't know if you would have enough time, but yeah, essentially, we're actually thinking of a V2 version of governance. Right now, it's been working okay, but we have, the way that it's set up is we have a council of made up of 5 members that essentially deal with all of the different streams of improvements and configuration changes. And we try and make that council diversified in terms of one VC, one team member, one content creator, and one like tokenomics expert, and we try and keep it so we've got like an expert angle at dealing with all situations. It's sort of after 18 months of rolling with this, I'm seeing a lot of improvements that can be made, and I think we're going to move to more of a 3-party council system. One that looks after more game decisions, one that looks after more of the DeFi and tokenomics decisions, and then more of like a operations council as well. And depending on what IIP is brought forward, which are our Illuvium improvement proposals, we will decide which council is the best to deal with those matters. And then you potentially have this one final council that's in the middle. And I don't know if we're going to call them councils or whatever. Maybe they're the executioners or whatever. But there's going to be another middle ground layer, which essentially accumulates all of these proposals and has the final tick of approval. And I think that will make our governance much more efficient. We'll have people debating things that are much more appropriate for them, instead of what's happening now is, a tokenomics discussion might only make sense to 2 of those members. And then when we're talking about, the content creator program that we're going to build, that might only be applicable to 2 members, but different members. And so we kind of got like this issue where there's only 1 or 2 people that are really the ones that should be making a call on it. And I don't think that's the most optimal way to handle it.
We're looking forward to seeing how it evolves, Kieran. Kieran, thanks so much for jumping on. I know the community is incredibly excited to hear what you guys are up to. I'm incredibly excited for land sale, as is apparently 200,000 other people. That is absolutely insane. So hopefully we can execute without a hitch. We're obviously fully on standby for that. And it's been a pleasure working with you guys and the team.
Sweet. Thanks, Robbie.